Good morning, everybody. Mark Sussman from Willamette Week. Delighted to be here with Kristi Balzer, who is the Executive Director of the Rock and Roll Camp for Girls. Is that the current name of your nonprofit, or is it the Girls? No, Rock and Roll Camp for Girls.
It is. It's Rock and Roll Camp for Girls.
Um, Rock and Roll Camp for Girls is really kind of an extraordinary Portland nonprofit because A, you've been around, I think next year will be your 20th year.
That's correct.
And B, this nonprofit basically is responsible for a global movement.
Yes, it is.
There are what, 40 or 50 rock and roll girls camps across the globe?
There's actually over 100 worldwide.
I'm sorry, that's pretty remarkable. Can you give us a minute and just simply tell us about your nonprofit?
Sure. So as you said, Rock and Roll Camp for Girls started here in Portland in 2001. It was started by a woman named Misty McElroy. She is our founder. She at the time was a Portland State University capstone student. So she was in her senior year doing her sort of community service piece of her senior year project. And Misty was also a punk musician in the Portland music scene, and really struggled as a female musician in Portland 20 years ago to find places that felt comfortable and safe for her to play, bandmates who didn't make her feel less than because she was a female punk musician. And she wanted to create a space for girls like herself to be able to get creative and get loud and take up space and learn music without the judgment of other people looking at them or putting them down for doing something that quote unquote girls weren't supposed to do, right? So she started this camp as her project. It was a 1-week summer camp. There was 125 kids at that very first camp and volunteers from all over Portland, many of whom were her own musician friends. And after that first summer, it really just struck a chord with both the campers and the volunteers, and they knew that they wanted to keep it going, even though it was only meant to just be that 1 week. And it's been going ever since. And it wasn't but maybe a year or two later that the camps in New York, Willie Mae Rock and Roll Camp for Girls, and the camp in Chicago started up. And then shortly after that, a camp in Sweden called Popkalo, which is one of our sister camps, started up. And now there is over 100 camps worldwide. There's camps on every continent on the globe except for Antarctica.
So the Portland original chapter, what do you do during the course of the year? You run a camp during the summer.
That's right. So we run 4 weeks of camp every summer. And in the fall and the spring, we run an adult retreat for women and trans adults called Liberation Rock Camp, where we do everything we do during this week of summer camp compressed into about 2.5 days. So we teach an instrument. Our campers form a band. They write an original song, and then they perform live at a local Portland venue. And that's what our youth and our adults do during that time. And then we spend the bulk of the rest of the year right now, because we're fairly small staffed at the moment, but doing fundraising for tuition assistance. So one of our core beliefs is that we provide assistance to every camper who presents a need so that no girl or trans youth is ever turned away due to lack of funds.
So how many children, kids, adults are you serving in the course of a year?
We serve about 260 campers under normal circumstances, right? When we're not in COVID. Each week we have about 60 to 65 campers during the summer camp. And we have about 30 or so adults at each of the Liberation Rock camps when we host those.
Talk about that. What has your year been like since March? You obviously didn't hold a camp this summer.
No, we held a virtual program. We called it Virtual Camp Rocks, VCR for short. It was a 2-week program. We had about 30 campers. It was all on Zoom, just as we are now. And we did do a lending of instruments. So we figured out a way to safely hand off instruments to campers, either by delivering them or having campers come to a designated location to pick them up. They were all cleaned down and carefully handled. And we kind of tried to replicate the camp experience as best we could in the virtual format. And camps across the globe did very similar things where we would bring all the kids together in for a morning meeting. We called it our morning mosh. So everyone together on Zoom at once. And then we would break the campers out into breakout rooms so that they could work with an instructor to learn an instrument, bass, guitar, drums, vocals, and then bring them back together for various workshops. We present workshops every year at camp, both virtually and in real world. So we do things like songwriting, self-defense, the history of women in rock. We do social justice workshops like race and equity in the music industry, all kinds of things like that, zine making, those types of workshops. So we were able to incorporate some of that into the virtual space as well. The only thing we were not able to do this year, because the technological leap for us was a little too much, being as small as we are, was to be able to have the kids form bands and create songs. So next summer, after having, again, worked with our other camps across the globe and talked to them about different ways that they did things, and then I myself was a camper at the adult program for the Seattle camp, Rain City Rock Camp, and they used a program called Soundtrap. So we're going to incorporate that this summer, and we'll be able to give the kids a chance to form up in bands and write original music again this summer, which is awesome.
And Kristi, talk about yourself. How did you come to run the Rock and Roll Girls Camp? What were you doing before then?
Before I was with Rock and Roll Camp for Girls, I actually was living on the central coast of California, and I was the executive director of a historic light station called the Point San Luis Lighthouse. And we moved here in 2015. And I actually just was in the right place at the right time. I was looking for a new executive director position, and Rock and Roll Camp for Girls was hiring, and their posting for a job, probably the one thing that stuck out to me most as a mother of two young girls was the idea of giving girls a space where they build each other up instead of tear each other down. There's so much, particularly in the tween age, kids in middle school, especially girls, there's so much conflict, and there's so much, sort of infighting amongst girls where, you're with a group of you think they're your really good friends, and then one week you're out and the next week you're in, and then this kid's out and that kid's in. So the idea of being part of something where everyone was in the whole time, and that those kids who felt like they were out all the time could have a space, even if it was just once a year, where they felt like they could be their whole self and express themselves however they wanted, really appealed to me.
So it's not like you're a shredder.
No, in fact, I'm not a musician at all, unless you count bar karaoke.
No, we do not count bar karaoke.
Yeah, I've dabbled a little bit with bass since I've joined the organization, but no, it was really my background as an executive director that appealed to the board at the time. So
Kristi, yours is a small organization. I can't recall, but isn't your budget like about $250,000?
Yeah, that's right.
So $100 donation via Give Guide, and your nonprofit is a member of Give Guide this year. What is $100? If I donate $100, what does that get for me?
God.
What does it get for you? What does it do for you? What are you able to do with that money?
One of the most important things to have at a summer camp like ours is earplugs. So, and we go through a ton of them every summer. So $100 actually buys us enough earplugs for 2 full weeks of summer camp. So that's a great donation.